We're going to talk about the MicroSurvey defaults and the MicroSurvey system toggles to a certain amount of detail in this movie. First, let's have a look at job defaults. I can open them up from the MS Tools ribbon. And what we're looking at here are the major MicroSurvey related settings that get stored with your project. In the top section, we can select items that will help the program to decide how to label line work and what direction format to use, what distance format to use, and that'll give it guidance as to how to correctly create text styles and insert symbols. Below that, we've got the drawing scale factor. That's an important value. That's the number that allows you to tell the program what scale you intend to plot the final product, and that will be used as guidance also for creating text styles and inserting symbols as you do your work. In the section below, we can see input scale factor and output scale factor. That'll allow you to perform calculations when you've got a mixture of grid and ground distances, and it'll allow you to accurately label your drawings. If you need to get into some more detail, you can go to the advanced option, and this allows you to manage all your scale factors and see what scale factors are applied to your labeling defaults. Below this, we've got point protection tolerance. That's an important feature of MicroSurvey that can also be toggled up here in the defaults group, and what that does is it turns on a feature of the program that will monitor for any time a point moves more than this set tolerance. If you've got point protection toggled on, you'll be alerted whenever a point moves more than that distance. This value is also used to determine when you're doing a 3-point arc whether you're looking for a right angle offset information or if you want to draw a curve based on those 3 points. Below that, we've got the set surface file and current surface. If you've got a QSB file that you'd always like to open when you open this drawing, you can assign it in this button. Below, we've got some general information. You can add some comments in this category of settings, and they'll be saved with your project. Below that, we've got the AutoMap library. This is the description code list, which you'll link to this project, and this will control line work, layers, symbol insertion as you create points. You can open a variety of different AutoMaps, and you can modify them for each project, but as you're modifying them, what you'll be doing is you'll be modifying the system AutoMap, and your changes will affect other projects. Below that, we've got the coordinate system that you're going to link to this project. If you pick on this dialog, then you can select a coordinate system from the group and system list, and after you've selected a system, you'll find that it gets added to this quick pick list where you can keep your most frequently used systems. If there is a geoid involved, you can link it to the project as well. If you pick on the info button, this will give you links so that you can download geoid files, and it'll also show you where to store the geoids so that you can view them when you pick on the pull down. Next, let's move over to the MicroSurvey system toggles. Here we'll have a look at the general settings category of the system defaults. First of all, we can see that next point and point protection are on this dialog, as well as input scale factor and output scale factor. What you'll find that these are duplicates to settings that are also found on the hot toggles dialog. You'll also find in the defaults group, you've got an option to toggle point protection on and off. The Kogo vertical angle, the print degree symbol, and the point description options all control what types of options you're prompted for as you're performing command line Kogo. You'll probably want to go into those movies for more detail on those operations or pick on the Help File button. AutoAdd Database is frequently asked about. This is a feature, when checked on, will automatically create points at endpoints of lines or at endpoints of lines and radial points of arcs, or at the vertices of any polyline as you use MicroSurvey automatic labeling functions. That has the added benefit of converting the dumb CAD line that you've picked into a smart line that will update if you ever update the database points. If you uncheck it, the MicroSurvey function will create the label, but it will be a static label. List East-North is an option that will be of interest if you work outside of North America, where eastings will be listed first and then northings second in all of your point-related dialogues. Use Xyz Notation is an option that will simply label coordinates as X, Y, and Z rather than northing, easting, and elevation. Use Default Description controls whether the default description, which is assigned in the labeling defaults, will be used when you create new points. Finally, the log file output option. You've got a choice of turning it on or off, and you've also got the clear log file button. That allows you to, as you're performing Kogo calcs or other point-related operations, it will create a text list in the background of all the operations, and you can open it up and you can review it if you need to solve problems. Let's switch over to the field note and Kogo entry settings. Now we're looking at the field note Kogo entry section of the system toggles. You'll find that the majority of the options that are in this section apply only when you're manually entering a traverse. There is another video on manual traverse entry, and it will go over those options and how they'll affect your input prompts. But under the Kogo options at the bottom of this dialog is a very important setting. The Apply Kogo Bearing Rotation. The checkbox you're looking at toggles on and off whether or not a bearing rotation will be applied as you're entering bearings, and the field below allows you to specify what that bearing rotation should be. Now what this means is if, for example, when I've got this checked on and I ask for a line to be labeled, it will modify that label according to this rotation. If I am inputting directions and I've got this option turned on, it'll modify my input direction according to that rotation. This makes it very simple for you to merge plans from different eras with different bearing bases, and knowing where to find this setting and to turn it on and off is a powerful feature of MicroSurvey. Now let's have a look at the Cad Drawing Controls. Let's have a look at the Cad Drawing Controls of your system toggles. I'll talk about these settings in groupings. The CAD Lines pop-up and the CAD Curves pop-up settings control what will happen when you pick on a line when you've got your CAD grips off. If you pick on, when you've got this checked on, then you'll see this dialog when you pick a line, or this dialog when you pick an arc. The settings for Draw Lines and Curves, Draw Distances, and Draw Bearings are duplicates of settings that are in the Hot Toggles dialog that you can see here. They'll control whether or not these elements are created as you're creating points while you do Kogo calcs. The settings Draw Point Identifiers, Draw Descriptions, Draw Elevations, Draw Point Nodes, and in a related way Draw Automap Symbols and Rotate Automap Symbols are all settings that will control whether or not these different elements are actually created in the CAD file as you're creating points. It is possible to turn off all of these options, and a record will be created in the database of a point with all that related information, but it won't be created in the CAD file unless you later on tell it to do so. That's very handy for situations where you've got lots of jack shots or point clusters from staking and things like that. The 2D point node setting. This is a highly useful setting that is best for when you're doing non-3D work. This will have the effect of toggling the CAD setting, which is called OSnapZ, and it will turn that on. And what that has the effect of doing is causing the Z value of any element that you pick off the drawing to be 0 or to match a value in the background, which is called elevation, which typically is set to 0. It will also draw all of your point nodes at 0 elevation, although in the active coordinate editor you'll see that it retains what their correct elevation is. This is a setting that you can turn on and off, and if you look up in the default section here, you can see there's a toggle to turn that one on and off. Point blocks is a feature that allows you to tell MicroSurvey to draw the point identifier, the description, the elevation, and the point node all as a single block. They'll look the same on the drawing, but if you pick on them, you'll find that they're drawn as a single block, and you'll find that you've got options for picking them apart and using leaders to link the different related elements. 3D point labels is another option which you may use if you're doing 3D work. By default, the point node will be drawn at the correct elevation, matching the database, and the point labels are drawn at 0 elevation. If you check on 3D point labels, then all of the elements of the point will be drawn with the same elevation as the point node. Here we'll look at the dialogues category of settings in your system toggles. In general, these settings allow you to set preferences for how you're going to be alerted and what information you'll see as you work with your drawing. The Use Single Point Editor toggle determines whether when you pick on a point element in your drawing, you'll be prompted with the single point editor so that you can review information about that one point, or if you're going to see the project database showing all the points with just that point highlighted. The Cartesian or geodetic options allow you to select whether when you ask for the single point editor, you'll be prompted with the regular northing easting elevation version, as we see here, or the geodetic version, as we see here, which allows you to work with latitudes, longitudes, and view things like deflection angles and scale factors. You'd need to have a coordinate system assigned to your project for this one to work. The Show Kogo Results dialog boxes will appear as you're doing, for example, a Kogo inverse, and it just gives you more detailed information about an operation that you've performed. You'll usually see the same information in the command line, but the dialog sometimes makes it more readable. Use Leroy notation for text size. If you watch the Labeling Defaults video, there's a little explanation of that one. Show Database Update Reports dialog. This is another pop-up that appears if you've moved points in your database. Perform Scale Factor Check. This is an option which by default is on. We'll always check that your input scale factor, output scale factor, and your labeling defaults match as they customarily would. There may be cases where you don't need them to match, in which case you'd want to go in here and uncheck it so that you don't see an alert every time you open the project. Show Calculator in Edit boxes. There's a built-in RPN calculator in most of the dialogues in MicroSurvey, and if you click in them, as you see here, then it allows you to perform calculations inline. Thanks so much for your interest in these settings. Notice that you've always got the inline help if you need to learn more about these settings, and we know that you're going to enjoy learning more about them as you learn the program.